One of the things we want to teach is what's the logic of what happens in a session in relationship to a particular psychological injury in the body. And there's two main categories of responses. One is what happens to the body in response to traumatic, perceived life-threatening situations. And then the other is what is the response that happens in the body with attachment or developmental or family scenarios from their childhood. So the body logic for attachment is different than the body logic for trauma, and both have to be processed in the session. So we're looking for them to understand that logic and then how to work with it. So first they have to understand what is the body responses, and then how do you work with that. So with trauma, we're working oftentimes with people that go into shock or dissociation or into orienting or defensive responses about the particular trauma. With attachment relationships, there's often some kind of an attachment failure. So some kind of missing attachment experience has happened where there's a failure to connect with the parents, or when there's an injury to the child, there's no repair, or there's a sense of abandonment or loss. So working with attachment, the issues in the body and in the psychology are going to be different than they are in trauma. But we want to be able to give them a body logic and a process for both. Well, the reason why we think sensorimotor psychotherapy is so important is because, like I was saying, many of our students, they know how to work with beliefs, with cognitions, with thoughts. They might know how to work with images and with emotions, but do they know how to work with body responses? In both trauma and attachment relationships, there's huge body responses that can happen as a response to injuries that are psychological. So they could have the shock responses, they could have loss, abandonment, and all those things show up in the body, particularly with attachment situations and with some trauma situations. People learn how to cut off part of their experience that's painful. And that's dissociation, that process of cutting off painful experiences. So they may dissociate from a certain range of their emotions. They may dissociate from a certain range of their sexuality. They may dissociate from their ability to connect at all. So part of my job is helping people to actually reconnect with parts of their experience that they blocked off, often through somatic mechanisms. So dissociation is not just something that happens in your head. It's literally your body can turn off. It's through amnesia or through analgesia. It turns off the sensation of feeling, which could include sensations of emotions and so forth. And we're looking for how the body responses get impaired or stopped. So, for instance, with dissociation, a person might begin to feel painful feelings about being abandoned in the attachment relationship. But soon after that, they may feel so much pain from that lack of attachment that they start to dissociate from their feelings. So then they could feel just numb or deadened or lack of motivation, lack of response. So part of our job is to recognize, okay, how does that mechanism happen? And then how do we work with reconnecting with the levels of the somatic experience that have been cut off by different mechanisms. The main goal for level 1 in our training is how to work with traumatic responses. So the big trauma responses are fight, flight, freeze. Freeze could be like deer in the headlights, like just can't move, can't respond, want to respond but can't. That's on the high, on the active end, the sympathetic end of the responses in the body. If those responses fail, then what happens is the passive responses start to take place. And that's where submission, feigned death, dissociation, and it looks quite different. You can often see the person's just, they look dull, their eyes get kind of far away, they get flat affect, and they even may look like they're submitting to the whatever, the perpetrator or whatever is happening. And so those responses on the passive end go all the way from submission all the way to feigned death. So we have to be able to work both with the active fight-flight responses and with the passive submission, feigned death kind of responses that happen with trauma. So we talk a lot about the 3 different branches of the autonomic nervous system, 1 sympathetic and 2 parasympathetic responses. And we also have to talk a lot about somatic resourcing. So the first step in working with a traumatized client is that they are somatically resourced, that they can actually feel connected to the present moment, that their feet are on the ground, that they feel centered and contained. Because with trauma, they lose all those resources. They may feel ungrounded, they may feel uncontained, they may feel like they're not in their body, like they're, even with some clients, especially with sexual abuse, it's like they're watching their body from outside. So we have to, the first step is to get them to just be in their body and to be resourced in the present. The second step is that they can actually process through the traumatic memory itself, and that's a whole series of weekends just to do that part of it. The second level is not working with perceived life threats like it was in the trauma training. It's working with attachment injuries specifically. So failure to attach to the mother or the father or to the family, inability to have a sense of self in relationship to the parents, changes in the personality, which you call character strategies, and the character strategies are different ways of dealing with the childhood scenario. We're actually looking for using it with all different kinds of dissociative disorders, which often comes as a result of trauma, and then working with attachment issues. And when you're working with both of those kinds of issues, one of the keys, which I didn't bring up before, which is mindfulness. So it's literally learning the capacity to be mindful of your own inner experience moment by moment, to stay present in your current experience. So that ability to be present, to observe the emerging feelings, emotions, sensations, and so forth, so you're actually processing it. Mindfulness is like the antidote to dissociation. Dissociation is leaving your body, turning off your ability to sense or feel, and using that as a way to rescue yourself from overwhelming experiences. To counteract dissociation, we have to teach people to be really mindful and present with exactly what's emerging in their body and in their psyche as they experience a particular issue. Oh, that would be that could take a couple of days. I have a lot of training in working with other methods for emotions and cognitions, and I use that training. I utilize EMDR, I utilize some Gestalt, I utilize some bioenergetic techniques. But for really getting into the logic of the body and the body responses, both with trauma and with attachment issues, this method is, for me, the most profound and the most detailed about how to actually work both with mindfulness and with the physical responses to help them complete and to have a sense of resolution. I would say the main thing that attracts me about this work is not even the technique. It's not even just all the knowledge. I'm very interested in the knowledge components of it. But the main thing that draws me to it is that it's really, for me, a spiritual path. And the path is to be present in the present moment in your body. So it's really about, can you be present both in yourself, mindfully present in yourself, but also with another person, moment by moment, and actually processing your life as it's happening. And that particular spiritual path, I feel like, that's what draws me the most. It's that ever-growing capacity to just be present with your life, all levels of it, emotionally, physically, cognitively, spiritually. So that mindfulness path has really been the thing that draws me the most of all.